Basically, been talking about doing some live audits, some bits and pieces. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share what I can see, and hopefully from there, go into some quick bits and pieces of what I've been doing. Okay, so let's play this off from the back. Okay, so I've been looking at a few websites that have been submitted, and the top one is the Australian Parachute Federation. This one actually looked really, really good, so it was kind of challenging to find any particularly wrong with this one. I'm hoping you guys can see my screen. It's on HTTP2 on the homepage, so it's really good. It's not yet supporting HTTPS and no content security policy. There are some internal links going through to the HTTP version of the site. It's not a big issue as the 301 redirects are correctly implemented. This means that there aren't any significant issues. Some of the images were tried to be embedded from a staging or another HTTP source. This meant that you would have dropped the green tick. However, when I kind of investigated, most of them were not actually being loaded over HTTPS at all. But they're actually an inaccessible server, causing them not to show up at all. Hey, can you hear me okay? Christina, can you hear me okay? Okay, cool.
I can hear you.
All right, brilliant. Sorry, it's just dropped out.
But now it's fine.
Okay, cool. Amazing. All right, so I'll carry on. Basically, one of the big problems that I did spot was a B grade certificate, and there's kind of an explanation of that on that link. So using Semrush, kind of looking over it, kind of checking everything out, and I was like that. It did kind of say exactly what I mentioned before. So there's 31 links on HTTPS pages and leading to HTTP pages and how to fix them, and there's kind of a few issues with mixed content. So this is the page that I mentioned, which kind of has the embedded images, which have got forbidden images trying to be loaded in over HTTP. So that's kind of why that one is kind of losing a bit of its support. The other thing is only getting a B grade certificate. When you use the SSL sort of tool that I've mentioned before, this tool kind of gives you a kind of grading on it, and it explains it in detail why each part of this is broken. So it basically says RC4 is the issue, and it says RC4 isn't something that kind of should be used at the moment. The other thing is I did find some of the pages on apf.com.au were on HTTP 1.1. Now, the problem here is if you're trying to use, if you're trying to go to HTTPS and you're using HTTP 1.1, you are slowing down your site very slightly. Now, it's not significant anymore in the way it used to be, but it's definitely something that if you can, try to go to HTTP 2 across everything. It's on the home page. It's just interesting that it wasn't on certain pages that I was looking at. So the next website I looked at was Tea and Coffee. This actually performed really, really well. So it was an HTTP 2, there was no issues, great, awesome, A-grade certificate. So the only really to do there is move to HSTS, which is kind of like changing the header, track it better in GTM, and make sure that your CSP headers are updated. I couldn't find any CSP headers, couldn't find it wasn't HSTS, so they were just the two kind of minor issues that should be fixed for that one. This one, baratmatrimony.com, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it completely right. Now this one had a lot more kind of minor issues. The homepage done perfectly, but as I started going through the site, I found kind of a few more sort of gentler issues. So, number one, there's redirect chains. The best thing to do with redirects is to kind of try and get them directly to the final destination. Now, the reason for this is twofold. One, it kind of drops the server load. So basically, you are sort of saying to the server, do multiple bits of work just to kind of load up the one page. When, if you could go directly, it would absolutely mean that it would perform far, far better. So wherever you've got chains, look at the kind of like destination, see if there's a way in which you can drop out the middle part, especially if it's a 302. 302s are cached, they're not kind of something which Google goes, I don't need to jump that part, so I need to keep checking it, checking it, checking it. This kind of causes crawl issues. It doesn't always give you the same kind of power as 301s. So there's a number of reasons from an SEO point of view to definitely move to 301s and try and drop out as many as you can. There was 182 issues with mixed content. To be honest, these weren't hugely bad, and actually there was some reasons why they could have been fixed up a bit. And 227 links on HTTPS pages lead to HTTP pages. This I'll kind of explain a bit more. Commonly linked out to a subdomain profile.patrimony, and but it does actually canonicalize back to the sort of HTTPS version. There was a lot of these links going to the subdomain. Now the problem there is the fact that this was a registration form. So the problem here is that if you don't make sure that this is fully secure, in Chrome you often get a much more aggressive warning saying you're about to submit personal information, you're about to submit stuff over an insecure connection. Now this is coming up and it's getting a lot more aggressive soon. So it's definitely something where you kind of need to fix these tiny things up, because it's going to terrify people soon when Google Chrome kind of steps up this warning. It's not just Chrome, it's also Firefox, which accounts for about 56% of most traffic to most websites nowadays. There's a lot of mixed content warnings, mainly for logos, small PNGs. So this was something which could probably be fixed up by kind of updating templates. Generally speaking, was kind of the biggest issue this site had. So it's not kind of a major issue. However, the scripts were blocked. Now, if these scripts actually mean that these pages do something, so for instance, on this login form page, the script is actually blocked, meaning that something that should be doing something practical or something which helps with conversion or something like that, that's absolutely blocked. Now, a lot of these look to me like they were tracking pixels. Now, tracking pixels are where it's more for kind of data retargeting, marketing purposes. So there was a lot of reasons why these should actually be kind of used. But if they're blocked, it means they're not firing. If they're not firing, it means you're losing the data. And sometimes that will give you kind of an issue where you're not sure whether or not this is working right or not. So, couple of quick recommendations. One is take advantage of Google Tag Manager. The reason why is it's quite a lot easier to kind of audit all your tags using Google Tag Manager than it is to use on-site scripts and things like that. So yeah, and also you've got loads of links to the duplicate subdomains. Try where possible to kind of get rid of these, one them up. I mean, when you've got kind of traffic going across multiple subdomains, where you've got traffic going across different parts of kind of like hosts, it can cause issues not just for HTTPS, but for analytics, for SEO, for loads of kind of different reasons. And it means sometimes you drop cookies and you can kind of find the data's inaccurate. But absolutely for HTTPS, try to remove the duplicate subdomains just to kind of get things back where it's going. At the moment, you've got canonical tags, so they're not probably being indexed too well. So you could probably get away with almost just 301ing them, deleting them, kind of updating the links, and just trying to kind of eradicate them, because it is just the same pages, just on different subdomains. So an A-grade certificate, that's definitely a plus. The next site I took a look at was Eduonix. Now this is a education site, and actually they did a really, really good job. So no kind of significant issues. But one of the things that I did spot was another chaining. 301 going to a 302, going to a 200. So this one again is kind of having those multiple steps in the chain, and also it goes via a 302 again. So it's definitely something where if you can drop out the chain, if you can remove links in that chain, not only will users be able to go and load pages faster, but they'll actually be able to kind of reduce the load on the server, and you're not having that 302 in the middle. So you're not losing kind of link juice going from that blog page actually to the relevant page. Especially if it's, the initial link is coming into the HTTP version, which is then 302 into the correct page. What you kind of really want to do is start updating the internal links, especially if they're common links from places like the home page and similar. So go through the site, find out where you are linking to HTTP, update it to HTTPS, and if there's kind of a chain or there's redirects involved, try to eradicate them. I mean, Semrush, Screaming Frog, loads of tools will help you kind of do this. Just look for chains and then eradicate them. A- certificate, which means basically you don't really have to worry. It doesn't support a forward sequency with the reference browsers, to be honest. I don't know anything about this, and it's not something that I would kind of know too much about. But it does also mention this site only works in browsers with SMI support. Now, the downside here is that is only 99% of users. That seems like pretty much everybody, but if I told you that I could increase revenue by 1% or 2%, most people would jump at that. So kind of losing 1% means that you're at a slight disadvantage. It's something to kind of investigate. I mean, when we were talking about the roundtable, what we kind of concluded and what we kind of said was the best thing to do was figure out how many people 1% would be and what would be the impact of it. So it's, if you're talking about 1 in 100 people, if you're talking about 100 people, or you're talking about 1,000 people, it kind of changes the revenue model to kind of upgrade it. But yeah, again, doesn't support HTTPS. This is something which really does help with your website security. And it's something that Google is saying they'll kind of take into the recommendations. So often following Google's recommendations mean you get an organic boost, and it's definitely something to do. So I would definitely kind of go ahead with that. Okay, as mentioned before, you've got a heck of a lot of links going to HTTP pages. I think that's a template issue rather than a direct kind of issue. So that is where I'd fix that. Yep, so as I mentioned, it doesn't support HTTPS. The other thing I kind of noticed down here, I don't know if you can see what I'm looking at, but where it says protocol in that table, it says it's HTTP 1.1. Now, that means that you're slowing the site down very marginally, but it is slowing it down. If you can move over to HTTP 2, you'd get an immediate boost. Now, that isn't kind of a straight switch always in some environments, but at a lot of websites, it is a switch. You just switch it on, job done. And it just means that the browser will start to load all of the files, all of the pages much quicker. Now you've got a big video on that website, so that's definitely something which you'd want to kind of try and sort of preload and fetch in at the same time, especially if it's critical to kind of the page loading. There was no CSP file on it, but again, if you've got HTTPS, you don't need a CSP. If you've got, but the CSP will just kind of allow you to kind of upgrade, automatically ensure there's no man in the middle attacks. I'll come on to that a bit later on, just to kind of explain really what that's all about. This is actually a tool done by a guy called Scott Helm, which allows you to build your CSP, and it's very simple. It's totally free. You can build it, you can implement it onto your website. The implementing onto your website is probably the hardest part than actually building it. It's just kind of changes to the headers. Now, previously, when I've done this kind of thing on a website myself, it's been very, very easy or nearly impossible. The two are almost exclusive in that way. HTTPS is the HTTP response that allows us to say, only have HTTP, nothing else. And you can kind of say that strictly everything is HTTP. Now, there's actually a list of these which you can kind of submit to Google. And then when Google comes along, it will say, I always know that this website should always be on HTTPS. And it saves it that kind of extra round trip. One of the interesting things was that nobody had a CSP in place of all of the websites I looked at. It kind of stops XSS cross-site scripting attacks, and this is something which is kind of fairly critical to kind of web security. This means that if there's anybody who can insert an extra script into the middle of it all, then this could be through GTM, it could be from any kind of way in whatsoever. There's lots of ways in which you can do this, but in essence, this kind of stops that from happening. If you're dealing with a website which needs to have high level security, a CSP is definitely recommended. A common issue that I've kind of been discovering is that these chains that I mentioned before, a lot of the time you find that if you load up a HTTP version, it redirects multiple times, particularly if there's wwws or without wwws in the way. So what I'm kind of saying is that what you want to do is make sure the wwws are there or not there, and you redirect directly to the correct single version. This does impact many servers if there's a lot of people hitting the kind of the wrong version. This might be because there's lots of links out there, there's lots of inbound marketing, but if it slows down the user as well, particularly if they're on a mobile device, then that's kind of not good, because one of the things that people are saying is that the speed to that first render, the speed at which the website actually returns it, then it's critical to kind of make sure that that's there. Okay, so as I mentioned, no one has HTTPS. This is the kind of the biggest issue that I've seen, and that's it. So the other thing is that nobody as well is using extended verification certificates. Again, this is something which you don't necessarily need, and it's not something which from a web security point of view is critical, but for bigger businesses, it's something to definitely look at. And part of the reason is because we've sort of seen a lot more spoofing of websites saying, you know, we're on this website, we're on that website, because what they've done is they've kind of used an extended character set that when you put it into the URL, looks like common letters. As a result, you can pretend that you're Apple, or you can pretend that you're a particular website, and you don't necessarily need to do it. Okay, so that's kind of all I had from the sites that were submitted. Were there any questions?
Hi, Gerry. Yeah, so you let's see if we have any questions right now. I haven't seen any so far because people have just been commenting about the video quality and stuff like that.
Oh,
so
has it not been good?
Well, it's been okay. It seems like sometimes it was a bit blurry. That's what people were saying. I'm really sorry about
Sorry.
But well, we'll see. We're trying to fix it now. However, on this point, I just want to tell everyone that please ask your questions if you have any questions about specifically the topic of this webinar, which is HTTPS migration and what Gerry was talking about. Yeah, so now Farhad is saying that he has a question. Let's see, I think he's typing it now. So I think we should give people a couple of minutes to write their questions.
Okay.
But at this point, yeah, I just wanted to thank you for the presentation, and it looked good. I hope that those whose websites were monitored by you were able to attend it. And
yeah, I mean, I've seen kind of a number of issues where people have kind of got very blogs, particularly, they've kind of got a lot of mixed content coming through, which is where somebody's edited it, cut and pasted a picture in because it's kind of stored in that way. Now, the CSV that I mentioned allows you to kind of upgrade these insecure resources never before, but you still, it's best to kind of go in. The other thing that I kind of mentioned is that, you know, when I do these audits, the best way to do it is to have Chrome open, the kind of the console and then the kind of the network inspector element. These bits allow you to kind of absolutely see whether or not it's on HTTP2, whether or not it's on HTTPS, and what error messages are actually causing the issues. It's interesting, actually, the sites that you guys sent over to me to kind of have a look through, one of the things that we found was that they all were actually pretty good. Now, in the past when I've been doing it, I've often found that the kind of the mixed content errors come from these hidden areas, like I mentioned before, which was places like fonts in CSS or CSS or kernel scripts, which were sort of somehow redirected. So it's a great thing that the sort of sites that were submitted didn't have any of these common issues.
yeah, well, that's a good sign, definitely. Yeah, we have one question now.
Okay.
Yeah, when we moved our website from HTTP to HTTPS, there were many links that came up in Google Search Console. It keeps on increasing day by day. So what's the best way to get rid of them?
So, sorry, what sort of links in Search Console? The inbound
yeah,
links?
so many links that came up in Google Search Console.
Okay, so you don't need to kind of worry about links coming into you unless there's a kind of issue with the link. Now, from a point of view of Google, you don't have to worry about updating all external links. You don't have to worry about you know, kind of going through and actually fixing these things up, unless there's a problem with the inbound link, as in, you know, when you click on it, it doesn't work, then that means that you've kind of got a redirect problem. Alternatively, if you think that the quality of the link is very bad, as in it looks artificially spammy, then you might want to disavow it. If you kind of get a lot of these, it could be negative SEO. We have seen it a couple of times recently, actually, but to be honest, that sort of thing, Google knows it exists, and Google doesn't worry about it too much. Bing and other sites, websites are kind of more susceptible to this kind of thing. So you kind of want to, if you have a disavow file for Google, you also want to kind of supply it to Bing and make sure that this sort of thing is kind of monitored. But it's a monitoring, it's not a panic thing, basically.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the answer. Now a couple of people are writing if you could do a quick check of their sites as well.
Yeah,
I
go
don't
for
know
it.
if that would be possible. I'm just gonna throw in the chat that we have with you in Google Hangouts so that you
Yeah.
can see the websites. So this is the first one. You can take a look at it. And then
Okay.
there was a second one as well. Let me find it.
GoFacts.com.
Yeah, just sending them to you. Thank you guys, by the way, for sending your websites and the questions as well. Well, usually you have to crawl those websites, right? So it takes quite a while. But yeah, if you can do kind of
sometimes, but I'm just kind of doing a quick look now. Now, my connection seems to be really bad today. So first thing I kind of notice on gofacts.com.au is it's wanting me to a HTTP-less version first. So the 301 kind of initially came in here. Now, wow, it could be because I'm based in the UK and this is based in Australia, but it's not loading up particularly fast. It also could be for reasons. Now, off the top, this site does not look like it's on HTTPS at all at the moment. So let me just share my screen so I can do this share screen again.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so you can see here that there we go. It's when I go to HTTPS, it redirects directly back to the HTTP, which is never kind of good. So there's no HTTPS on this site at the moment, and in the canonicals and on the site there, yeah, it's not something which they look like they're kind of going over to. Just want to see if I can see what this site's built on, because it might be very, very easy to yeah, so this site is built on WordPress, which means that actually moving over to HTTPS is relatively simple. As Andy explained in the sort of the previous one, you just kind of have to change the root thing, scan it, and then just keep kind of changing and updating bits and pieces. Now, there is a plugin which will allow you to kind of push things over, and also Cloudflare and some of the other kind of CDN systems will allow you to sort of assist with actually pushing over anything that's left, kind of automatically upgrading and making sure that everything works. So because it's WordPress, moving over to HTTPS should be relatively simple. However, if it's got a lot of custom scripts and custom coding, it's a custom theme, then that means that it might be a bit more challenging. But yeah, at the moment, I can't see anything saying that it's available on HTTPS. So I mean, if I just try changing this to HTTPS, see what the server does to it.
I guess you can try to check the second website then. If
yeah, go for it. Sheerwaterglass.co.uk.
And also we are having a question. Actually, we're having lots of comments, which is great. Again, thank you guys. There is one question from Zach, and he's saying that I don't quite understand the concept of HSTS. So if you could maybe explain that as well, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me just check on this one. So, okay, this one, I did actually look at this one before, but it was really, really good. Now, the only thing that I found that was a little bit wrong with Sheerwaterglass is the fact that it's on HTTP 1.1. Basically, that means it's a bit slower than if it was on HTTP 2, particularly because it's on HTTPS. So try and see if you can move up to HTTP 2 for Sheerwaterglass, and then kind of go from there. Now, I have a feeling I put it into here already. Let's see if I've got it. Probably shouldn't swear at my computer when I'm live, but it's not going particularly fast enough. Okay, so in here we've got the HTTPS implementation tab, and you know there is, except for the fact it doesn't support the HSTS. So let's have a look at what it says about HSTS. Basically, when you try to load a website, if you type in www.justeat.co.uk, for instance, it tries to load it up on HTTP. what it doesn't try to do is kind of automatically go to HTTPS. Now, if we kind of tell Chrome, if we tell all of these things that this big list of websites is on HTTPS, then it will allow you to automatically kind of go directly there without hitting that initial one, getting redirected, all the rest of it. It kind of speeds it up a little bit, and it also tells the kind of like the browser, everything on this website should be secure. Nothing should be insecure. So, you know, images, scripts, everything, it shouldn't be like that. It's very similar to the CSP. So if you're kind of comfortable with the CSP, HSCS is very, very similar. Now, the best place to learn about this is the Scott Helm blog. And so if you just Google Scott Helm HSTS, then you're going to basically find out a lot more about it. Cool. So yeah, so that's the only problem really with the Shearwater class. Now, I had to look at lots of bits and pieces on this website, and I couldn't see anything else particularly wrong. So that's pretty good. Correctly, it also got a near grade A certificate. So
well,
if you go
congratulations
into
on this website.
SSL, normally there's a form, but I'm kind of bypassing it by just chucking it into the URL. This allows you to see the quality of the certificate. Now, if I remember correctly, this did get an A as well, which is kind of why I left it on like the audits. It was almost too good today.
I'm currently sending you a couple of more websites that people are submitting right now. So if you have time, well, I think we have time. So if you could so go do a quick check on them, that would be great as well. I guess people would be happy to
Absolutely.
do that. And Mark, who submitted the Shearwater Glass website, is saying thank you. So thank you, Gerry, again.
So let's have a look at this website.
Sorry?
I'm just having a look at this one. So I usually filter it down to the docs, and then, oops, do you know what? That's the one. So again, Lending Stream is on 1.1, which is good, but it's better if it was on HTTP 2. There's an, oh, Hotjar's being loaded in on HTTP 2. So yeah, loaded in on Hot.1. And so there's kind of a lot of noise going on outside this room. So okay, so yeah, so again, try to go up to HTTP2. Now, if we click into it to have a look at the, oops, if we have a look at the whether or not there's a CSP or anything else like that. So, can't see any. So again, can't see any there. It doesn't look like it supports HSTS, but let's have a quick look at certificate type. So there we go, Shearwater Glass A-star certificate. Let's have a put this one in at the moment. Okay, it's loading up and going through it. I'm going to have a quick look at what the next one is. God, don't know how to write that one. Sign barnessuperguide.com.au. Did I get that wrong? Barnes.
So how is it looking so far? I also get a couple of questions for you, so let me know when I'll be...
go for it. Yeah, go for the questions, and I'll just try to type these in.
First question I found here is, does Google rank HTTPS higher than HTTP?
Absolutely. So it definitely does, but it's a question of how much it does. So what I do find is that, you know, if you do all things equal, a HTTPS website will beat a HTTP website, but generally speaking, nothing's 100% equal. So it's kind of marginal gains. If you're doing 10 things, you'll kind of get the boost because you've got 10 good things. So definitely do it, but don't worry about anything else.
All right. Well, I think that answers the question. And another one is, could you please list all the things SEO experts need to take care of before moving from non-secure website to secure, from non-secure domain to secure domain? And can you please provide it priority-wise? So starting with the most.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I've got this room booked.
I know, if it's all right, do you mind taking fried chicken? Which is
No, I kind of need to keep on this one. Sorry, I'm not actually live at the moment. Sorry about that. So anyway, what was I doing? Yeah, so sorry. Right, so actually, the guys that I was working with before, they basically had done a Trello board, which I think we shared with the previous one, and that is.
The Trello board was shared with us. Actually, I think I can put the board in the description of this webinar so that everyone after the webinar could check it out and see what.
Perfect. Okay, I'll send it over to you. Okay. Can't cut and paste from this thing. Right. So. Right.
Oh yeah, thank you for the Trello board. I'll put it in the comments now.
Superb. Right. Okay. Signs. Can you do me a favor? Can you Can you just put it as like HTTP in front of it so I can click on it? I know it sounds crazy. It's just that when I try and cut and paste, it doesn't work.
Which one are you trying to get to as?
This one here. Can't believe cutting and pasting doesn't work on this thing.
This one is signs. This one, yeah, yeah. Just yeah. I'll do this. Yeah, HTTP before. Yeah. Wait a second.
So yeah, this Trello board is one that was set up for a kind of migration, and what we've done is taken a copy of it and made it available to anybody and everybody. So if you want to use it, just take a copy of it. We're kind of going through it and trying to fix bits and pieces up, but this is certainly not a guide, but it's also covers bits and pieces that might not be for different people. So, you know, I think we're going to keep adding to it. So bookmark it and you can come back to it.
Actually, I don't know why, but it says that the website cannot be reached. Maybe I'm doing.
Okay.
I don't know.
All right. Are there any more websites?
Did you check the last one, which is barnessuperguide.com.au?
Let's try to. Barnes.
It's superguide.com.au. Yeah, that would be the last one, I guess. So this one is loading. Yeah, that's great.
Okay, right. So this one. So it's interesting. I'm getting kind of some forbidden errors as I try to load it up. I don't know quite what's going on there. So it's trying to load up a quant.js reserve. JavaScript file, and that's not loading in. But let's go back into the network part and have a look at. Oh, amazing! So this one is actually on HTTP2. That H2 means that it's on HTTP2. It looks like this one's kind of already there. That's great. If I click into it, let's have a look and see if there's anything else that they're doing. It's cool. Ah, there we go. Nope. Interesting. But it looks like what they're doing is pretty good. Again, it doesn't look like they've got the HTTPS kind of upgraded there. So again, that looks really, really good. Let's see about the certificate again and see if there's anything that's kind of going to be there. Ooh, so Lending Stream didn't get the best support certificate. Anyway. Wow. Looks like it's already been tested recently because it kind of loaded up cached, and that's an A. So everything looks really good there. Again, only works with SNI support, which means that it could mean that you know, 1 or 2% of people cannot access that website. So again, evaluate the cost of providing it without SNI support. Okay.
Well,
Any more questions?
Yes, we have a couple more questions that I wanted to ask you. And also at this point, guys,
Yeah,
I wanted
different.
to send more questions if you have them. We still have some time, so ready for a dialogue. Yeah, so the question here, I successfully migrated my WordPress site with A grade certificate, but lost all the social shares. Any solutions suggested without the use of any WordPress plugin?
Nope. In short, that is one of the biggest problems, and I haven't found a solution to this. If anybody does find a solution, please let me know. Social shares, all those kind of things, it just doesn't kind of carry across, even though everything else is there. In fact, yesterday at an SEO conference, we were kind of discussing it, and it seems like that's one of the biggest issues that people find. I mean, that said, it's not something to necessarily worry and panic about, but yeah, it's definitely something that should be done.
Yeah, well, so I guess that's the answer. And then we're getting also some other websites submitted. So Gerry, if you don't mind, I'll send them to you in the chat. You also have something else to look at. Just a second. That's the first one. Did you get this?
Yeah, colorist.n.
Yeah. We have a couple of more.
So again, this is on HTTP 1.1, it's not on HTTP 2. If we have a look at the page, has it got any... I don't know, Fusion Passenger, it's an interesting one. But yeah, so that so far looks quite good. Let me put it onto the console and give it quick. So again, taking a look at the redirect path. Perfect. Now, without crawling these websites, it's kind of hard to give you a great, full, complete guide and things like that. But so far, this one, nothing wrong with it yet. Let's have a quick glance at the grade. Oops.
And also, while you're checking, there is another question, and it was: is every website recommended to go straight to secure? So does it apply to all sorts of websites?
You know, increasingly, yes. Historically, I'd have said no, because the cost, the implications, all the rest of it. In the past, I'd say 6 months, the sheer amount of things that people are doing to these websites now, and the security implications, if it's anything above a bog standard flag waving site, absolutely. I mean, even if it's WordPress, WordPress is far more secure at some HTTPS than when it's on straight standard HTTP. So yes. However, if it's kind of an existing site and you're thinking about migrating over to HTTPS, kind of take it slow. There is no massive rush. It's better to kind of have the phased approach that we kind of discussed before, where you do take a little bit of time to kind of do it as well as you can. Okay. The reason I'm checking the blogs is the blogs is usually the worst places for mixed content, but again, this seems really good. Come on. Can't find anything wrong with the site so far. And the SSL certificate, oh, that's not so good, so it's a C. So there's a problem here, which this allows it to say, it says it's supports weak. Okay, so this is vulnerable to the Boodle attack. This means that basically it's using SSL rather than TLS. This is something that I have to be honest, I love the idea of a poodle attack, but basically, I don't know if you know this before, but Tom in the Semrush webinar before was explaining that the reason that we now call it TLS rather than SSL is that Netscape kind of owns the brand SSL, and TLS is basically SSL version kind of like 4. Basically disable it to kind of stop yourself from getting the being subject to the poodle attack. This basically means that you've got kind of a few some minor issues with the way in which your encryption works. So it's definitely worth kind of investigating this and probably just disabling that. There's no problems with disabling it, but there's kind of issues with leaving it open.
Yeah, and here, Gerry, you mentioned the webinar that we did a couple of weeks ago with you, Tom, and Andy. I'm just going to post it to the comments here so that people, if you're interested, you could also watch it, because there was lots of interesting information about moving to HTTPS there as well.
Yeah.
So it's in the comments.
But no, other than that, oh, hang on, there's something else on this page that's causing an issue. So let's have a look at what that is. Yeah, so again, as I mentioned before, I always find blogs are the worst parts for migration and kind of having those mixed content warnings. This isn't a major issue, but it looks like a requested image is trying to be loaded over HTTPS. Now, this isn't kind of a massive issue. It just means that you're going to lose the green tick, and it's interceptable basically. So you know, somebody could put a cookie dropping image into the page. So it's not kind of a massive issue, but it's definitely something to kind of look for.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. And there is another question. So basically, someone's just asking to list you all the tools or websites that you've been using to audit the HTTPS versions of website.
Yeah, no worries at all. So most of it you can actually do in Chrome. Now, one of the things that I will show you just now is when you're in Chrome, this bit here, the protocol part, is actually hidden away. Now, if you right-click, so to get this, I should probably actually start there, shouldn't I? So if you just, whoops, right-click, inspect element, kind of bar that pops up, and along here, you get all the different bits and pieces. Edit this cookie and data slayer, observe point, are things that I've added in myself, so they're kind of not sort of standard, but network, sources, and console are standard. Console is the one that kind of gives you all the messages, which is the mixed elements and everything, and that is definitely the one to leave open. Now, normally when I'm browsing around sort of websites I'm working on, I've got 2 screens and the console, and this whole thing is on a second screen, so it's much easier to use than what you're sort of seeing at the moment. Now, the other part of it is this network. Now, if I reload this page, what you'll see is that you can see everything that's loaded up into the page. Now, I usually filter it down to the doc. And as I say before, I kind of make sure that I've got what I want to on it, so I can have scheme, I can have the protocol, and things like that. So again, I can see here now this is on HTTP2. Sometimes it says H2, sometimes it says HTTP/2. There are things that can say, it can sort of say speedy and other bits and pieces, so you can then kind of look into it from there. If you click onto any particular resource, it'll give you the headers and it'll give you other bits and pieces. So yeah, it's kind of a fantastic resource just on its own. The other thing that I've been using is, of course, Semrush, which the kind of ability to crawl across a site and give you kind of really good HTTPS implementation certificates is kind of amazing. So 4 marks there, Christina.
Thank you.
And
yeah.
it's almost the quickest and easiest way for me to kind of go and do this kind of auditing. You know, when you kind of set it up, you can set it up to crawl 1,000 pages, 10,000 pages. You can set it up to do a lot, and you can say whether or not you should obey robots.txt and a lot more. So there's kind of lots of bits and pieces in there. The other thing I always use is Screaming Frog, of course, and that you can export mixed content relatively easily. And Screaming Frog is, I think they've just increased the price, but it was £100 a year. I can't remember the price now. And then finally, there's the SSLLabs.com SSL test, which kind of is the best way to kind of investigate it, whether or not the certificate is good or bad. And then finally, the one as well, there's a CSP inspector and builder, which is done by Scott Helm. CSP builder, Scott. I never remember the actual URLs, I just remember how to Google them. So he's probably getting a lot of weird keywords repeatedly. And this allows you to build that CSP. Report URI also allows you to track mixed content. So what this kind of does is in here, where you've got the report, report only, report URI, report to, what you can do is you can say that you're kind of pushing out mixed content reports actually to something to list them all. Now, if you're migrating over, this allows you to kind of track these things really effectively. Okay, so Semrush, let's have a quick look at Semrush.
Yeah, well, thank you so much again for naming all the tools and the instruments that you've been using. It would be great if you could kind of put it in a list written, and then I can also put a description of the video so that people can always access it. I guess that would be a good idea, right?
No worries at all. Do you want me to send that to you straight after the call?
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Will do.
Yeah.
So this looks
good. We have 10 minutes left. Sorry for interrupting. And at this point, yeah,
that's okay.
Just wanted 10 minutes. And yeah, if you guys have more questions, please feel free to write them here. And you can also connect with Gerry on Twitter. I'll post your Twitter handle, right, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And yeah, also feel free to write us to webinar@semrush.com. If you have any questions about this webinar or any coming webinars, we'll be happy to answer them. And yeah, go ahead, Gerry. Sorry.
That's okay. I'm just having a quick look through this one just to see if it's any good. This one again looks good. Now, again, nobody seems to be going with the EV certificates, which is interesting. An EV certificate is like Apple's one, where it actually says the name of the brand actually in the thing. But I'm kind of gonna, let's go back to this one for just a second. Oops. There is actually a lot more you can do in Chrome as well. For instance, you can check out the certificate, you can check out other bits and pieces in here and stuff like that. The downside is that I'm kind of not as experienced in this element of it, and it's relatively new, so I haven't been kind of using it too much. But it does mean that there's kind of some nice kind of cool bits in here. So it's definitely something to kind of keep an eye on if you're doing the migrations. Let's give this a test. Okay. Oops, not the one I was looking for. This is the one. Okay, this is taking a while, but yeah. So as I mentioned before, they're the tools that I kind of use at the moment. Is around that kind of have similar tools and everything. So yeah. The other thing that this will do is it will also allow you to pull in a CSP. So if I wanted to, I can take that URL and paste it in here, and it'll import. As I mentioned before, most of these that I've found have not had a policy yet. To be honest, most websites out there, I've reluctantly put these policies on. The reason why is it actually makes it a lot more challenging to kind of use.
All right. Well, so how is it looking so far?
It's coming there. It's just, I think it's decided that I'm kind of very, very last minutes, but yeah. I think I've been hitting it too hard, so yeah.
Yeah, that's all right.
Right.
This is what happens when we go live, that's fine.
Absolutely. So, I mean, again, this is the view in Semrush, and the kind of information in there is phenomenally good actually now. What was the one that I was looking at before? So this is the one that I mentioned before that had the major issues. So if I kind of just click into that one, come on. All right. Oh, there you go. It's an A grade. All that just for that. So perfect. Okay, so this is the one I mentioned before, which had kind of quite a lot of mixed content issues and other bits and pieces. So if I click into the HTTPS implementation, you can see in here all of the issues of mixed content, and it tells you where they are. And what I often find is that once the numbers are high, you often find that it's one or two common things across them. So you can find that by fixing one or two things, the numbers rapidly drop down. And as mentioned before, a lot of these pages are leading up to leading to HTTP pages. And the downside to that is that if you're 301 redirecting, which means that you are still retaining kind of like HTTPS, increasing the load on the server and also slowing down that kind of path. Every time somebody hits a redirect, it has to kind of wait for the response and all the rest of it. Now, again, on a desktop, on a high-speed internet, it's not usually that bad, but on a mobile, that can actually add quite a lot kind of round trips to the kind of loading of the page. So it's definitely something not to kind of do. So yeah, this is kind of an example why I like Semrush for this one particular purpose. So yeah. Going back into it, HTTPS implementations. It says in here again about whether or not it supports HSTS, so that's really, really cool. And it also explains where it is and what isn't supported on it. Imagine, I haven't seen too many websites yet supporting HSTS, but every time I talk to people about HTTPS migrations, they say this is such a critical part of it all. And it's something that Google themselves are recommending, so it's definitely something which, if you want to get that organic boost and you want to tick all the boxes, kind of go for that one. 100% confident with it. Cool. Okay, any other questions?
I don't think there are any more questions, but well, I think that it's about time we should wrap up now. And at this point, I just wanted to apologize again for the technical issues that we've been having with this webinar, the video quality. But I think in the end it was fine because, well, people were able to hear us and there were lots of comments, which is always great. So thank you so much for that.
Super.
I feel like how we can fix it is, yeah, what I suggested before, just sending all the info, all the important info that you were mentioning and putting it into the description box of the webinar. So I guess that will help and then people will have an access to all the resources that you are using. I guess this will help. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, I will send those over to you straight away and we'll kind of pick them out.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, thank you so much again for finding some time for joining us so early in the morning, your time. Hopefully, yeah. Well, then have a great day, and you guys as well have a great day. Thank you for attending the webinar. If you have any questions, as I mentioned, you can write to webinar@semrush.com, and also if you want to connect with Gerry, you can do it on Twitter, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you so much, guys. Bye, and see you at another Semrush webinar.
Bye.